Imagine you wake up one day and almost all the money you have in the bank is gone. This is what happened to many people in my country, Cyprus, in 2013. I know what you're thinking, this must be fake. Well, listen closely because this can also happen to you. The root of the problem was very clear: banks. For years, the two biggest banks of my country, LyQI Bank and the Bank of Cyprus, bought a lot of government bonds from Greece. This basically means that they were lending billions to the Greek state with the hope that they will earn an interest when the bonds mature. This doesn't sound too bad of a deal, but then the disaster came. In 2012, Greece struck what was called the PSI deal. In basic terms, the Greek government told to everyone that invested in Greek bonds that they will recover roughly 25% of the bonds true value. So all of a sudden, the bonds that Cyprus banks had were worth way less. This was a very big hit. So the banks in Cyprus needed a rescue. More exactly, to recover the economy, Cyprus needed 23 billion euros, which at the time was more than the whole GDP of Cyprus. And who came to rescue Cyprus? Well, here it enters the story, the famous Troika, which is how people name the combination of three very important institutions: the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. They offered Cyprus a 10 billion rescue package, but with one tricky condition: the Cypriots had to pay for it directly. How exactly? Well, all of the Cypriots that had less than 100,000 in their banks were protected. But anyone that had more than that got their account locked above the 100,000 euros threshold. So basically, if you had 350,000 euros in your account, you could only access 100k. And not only this, but for months after, Cypriots could only withdraw a maximum of 300 euros per day in cash. And international transfers were banned. This was the first time in the EU history that ordinary depositors were forced to rescue a bank. The president at the time, Nikos Anastasiadis, 2 weeks before he signed the deal, promised to the entire country that he will not sign this specific deal. And after 2 weeks, he just described it as a painful step taken to avoid complete bankruptcy. Still, the consequences of this painful step were extraordinary. GDP shrank 6% and unemployment hit 16%, and thousands of small businesses were forced to close. Now, after 12 years of these disasters, Cypriots still feel the consequences, especially those without insurance that had their money in LyQI Bank, which was shut down in 2013. They have recovered almost nothing. Most who were uninsured in the Bank of Cyprus, though, have made back around half of what they lost. To fix this situation, the government of Cyprus set up a National Solidarity Fund, which should start giving payouts in the coming months. After all this time. But this won't be enough, as the Solidarity Fund is only about 260 million. But people claim around 2 billion euros in verified losses. So, since this happened to my country, I never trust banks. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this situation. Let us all know in the comments below.